Yeah.
Ever wondered what African women really think about stuff?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like life, work, relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to fall into those stereotypical boxes.
Yeah.
But get ready to have those assumptions challenged because in this deep dive, we're going behind the scenes of this YouTube video. It features 6 Nigerian women who bring some serious heat to the conversation.
Yeah, it's really
And
interesting.
trust me, they do not hold back.
What makes it so insightful is that these women, they come from such diverse backgrounds, different generations, careers, family structures.
Right.
Yet their experiences, they often mirror these broader societal tensions around gender roles in Nigeria.
Which is fascinating because you mentioned Nigeria, and it's kind of the perfect microcosm, right?
Yeah.
Africa's most populous nation. This incredible mix of ethnicities and religions, like a crash course in understanding these global debates.
Absolutely. And one of the hottest debates that jumps out right away from this video is, should a woman out-earn her husband?
Oh yeah, they went there. I was hooked from that moment on. So walk me through it. What are some of the arguments that these women are making?
Well, on one side, you have this perspective rooted in deeply ingrained patriarchal norms,
Right.
which, let's be honest, are still really prevalent in many African societies.
Mm-hmm.
For some of these women, the husband is traditionally seen as the provider, and a wife out-earning him. It disrupts that balance.
Yeah.
They worry it might lead to, say, neglect of the home, less focus on the children,
Right.
even a husband feeling disrespected.
It's interesting. You can almost feel those generational differences, right? Are these views more common amongst older generations?
Absolutely. And that's where it gets really interesting, because then you have this other group of women who are like, nope, absolutely not. They fire back with these really passionate arguments about how vital financial independence is for a woman's empowerment.
Right, because it's not just about the money itself. It's about what that money represents.
Exactly. It's about agency, control over your own life, and the freedom to make choices that align with your own goals, not just, the expectations placed upon you.
Yes. And one woman even says, my money is my power.
Yes.
Which I thought was so powerful. You can just feel how important that idea of self-reliance is to these women. But I'm curious, what about the women who hold those more traditional views? Do they ever budge on this?
Well, there's this one moment that really highlights the complexity of this issue. One of the women who holds those more traditional views, her daughter is 32.
Okay.
So the host asks her, what if your daughter was offered a job that paid significantly more than her husband? Would you tell her to turn it down, to make herself smaller so her husband doesn't feel disrespected?
Oh, wow. What does she say?
Even she hesitates.
Yeah.
And you realize that even within families, these conversations are evolving. Younger generations are navigating these complexities with a different set of experiences and expectations.
Which makes you wonder, are those traditional views softening as those younger generations come of age?
Yeah.
Or are we going to see more of a head-on clash?
Right.
I mean, it's not just a theoretical debate, right? There are real-world consequences to how these different perspectives play out.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another key question these women grapple with. Is a woman's earning power inherently limited in Africa? This is where things get really nuanced.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are the different sides of this debate?
Well, some of the women speak to the very real disadvantages that women face, especially in certain communities.
Right.
They highlight issues like limited access to education, fewer opportunities in certain fields, even cultural norms that prioritize a boy's education over a girl's.
It's like that old saying, educate a man, you educate an individual. Educate a woman, you educate a nation.
Exactly. And some of these women share stories about how those barriers have played out in their own lives,
Right.
which are incredibly powerful. One woman talked about how in her tribe, boys are often prioritized for educational opportunities. She had to fight tooth and nail just to get the same chances as her brothers.
Wow. That just breaks my heart. And it makes me wonder, is that a common experience?
Sadly, yes, especially in certain regions. We see this reflected in literacy rates, for example. In many sub-Saharan African countries, the female literacy rate is significantly lower than the male literacy rate.
It's a stark reminder of how much we take for granted, even just having access to basic education.
Right, and it underscores why this debate about earning potential is so charged. It's not just about individual ambition, it's about overcoming deeply rooted systemic inequalities.
So if we're talking about limited access to education as one factor, what are some of the other reasons these women give for why it might seem like women have a harder time reaching their full earning potential?
Well, one woman shared a story about how her family discouraged her from pursuing her passion for football simply because she's female.
Wow.
This idea that certain fields are for men is still prevalent, which obviously limits opportunities for women. And then, of course, there are cultural expectations around marriage and motherhood.
Right.
In many cultures, women are still largely expected to be the primary caregivers, which can make it harder to balance a demanding career.
Right, because even when women are able to access education and job opportunities, they're often still juggling so much more at home.
Hmm.
It's like society hasn't quite caught up to the idea of women having it all. So it sounds like there's a lot stacked against women, even before we get to the actual workplace. But I'm guessing this wouldn't be a good deep dive if there wasn't another side to this story, right?
Exactly. And that's what makes these conversations so fascinating. Because despite all of these challenges, there are women who push back on the idea that a woman's earning power is inherently limited in Africa.
Okay.
They point to their own experiences, the successes they've achieved, often in the face of incredible odds.
They're basically saying, don't tell me what I can't do. I love it.
Right. It's this incredible spirit of resilience and determination. They argue that limitations are often self-imposed, that with enough willpower and the right mindset, women can achieve anything they set their minds to.
And they have a point, right? Look at all the incredible female entrepreneurs, CEOs, scientists, artists. African women are breaking barriers in every field imaginable. It's like you said earlier, individual experiences weaving into these broader societal narratives, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And that's the beauty of this video. It doesn't shy away from those contrasting viewpoints. It forces us to confront the complexity of these issues, to see how these larger forces, culture, history, economic shape, individual experiences in such profound ways.
It's a good reminder that there's rarely a simple answer, a black and white solution, especially when we're talking about something as multifaceted as gender roles and economic empowerment.
Precisely. And speaking of multifaceted, this next part is where the video takes a really interesting turn. Some of these women start talking about the idea of feminine power, which, as you can imagine, sparks a whole other debate.
Okay, feminine power. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Before we dive into that conversation, though, let's take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to unpack this fascinating topic. Okay, so we're back. And you just brought up this whole idea of feminine power. And I got to admit, when I first heard that phrase, my skeptical antenna went way up.
Yeah.
So help me out here. How are these women defining feminine power? And why is it causing such a stir?
Well, it's one of those concepts that can be interpreted in so many different ways, which is exactly why it sparks such heated debate.
Right.
Essentially, some of these women argue that, simply by being women, they've experienced certain advantages,
Okay.
certain doors opening that might have remained closed to men.
Interesting. So it's less about like inherent power and more about how societal perceptions can sometimes, even inadvertently, work in women's favor.
Exactly, yeah. And they give some interesting examples. One woman talks about how throughout her career, she's noticed men seem quicker to offer help or mentorship to younger women just starting out. Almost like there's this ingrained instinct to support and guide them.
Okay, I can see how in certain situations that dynamic might play out. But I also imagine it must be incredibly frustrating for the women who are, working hard, proving their skills,
Oh, absolutely.
to have their successes potentially attributed to their gender instead of their talent.
Oh, absolutely. And you see that frustration bubbling up in the video. Some
Yeah.
of the women are outraged by this whole concept of feminine power. They're like, are we seriously suggesting that just being a woman is some kind of free pass to success?
Right, because let's be real, it's not like those deeply ingrained societal barriers we talked about earlier magically disappear just because you're a woman.
Exactly. And for many of these women, acknowledging any potential advantages feels like minimizing the very real struggles they face daily,
Right,
especially those from less privileged backgrounds.
right. It's like, don't tell me I have it easy just because I might get a foot in the door.
Yeah.
Having walked in my shoes.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is where that generational divide pops up again.
Okay.
Some of the younger women especially push back hard against this feminine power narrative.
Okay.
They see it as a distraction from the bigger picture, which is dismantling those systemic barriers, fighting for equal pay, equal opportunities, an end to harassment and discrimination.
It's like they're saying, let's not get bogged down in these nuanced debates about subtle advantages when there are still like fundamental inequalities to address.
Precisely, yeah. They argue that focusing on these more subtle forms of bias can deflect attention from the systemic issues that require systemic solutions.
Which makes you wonder, is it even possible to address both?
Yeah.
Can we fight for systemic change and have those more nuanced conversations about, how gender is perceived and how it plays out in our everyday interactions?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And this video doesn't pretend to have all the answers,
Right.
but it does highlight the importance of having these difficult conversations, even when they're uncomfortable.
Because acknowledging that discomfort, that tension between different perspectives, is often the first step to finding common ground.
Right. Absolutely. And speaking of finding common ground, the next topic these women tackle is one that I think will really resonate with you.
Okay.
They dive into the question of whether women genuinely support each other, especially when it comes to wealth creation.
Ooh, that's juicy.
Yeah.
Okay, so set the scene for me. What are they saying?
Yeah.
Are we talking like women supporting women Instagram vibes?
Right.
Or is it more complicated than that?
It's a real mixed bag, actually. Some of the women share incredibly positive experiences.
Okay.
They talk about their closest female friends being their biggest cheerleaders, their mentors, their confidants in the business world.
Okay, I love to hear that because, let's be real, navigating those male-dominated spaces can be tough.
Yeah.
Having that solid network of women who get it, who understand the unique challenges you're facing, can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And these women talk about how vital those networks have been to their success, both personally and professionally. They share stories about, women helping each other secure funding, navigate difficult negotiations,
Right.
or even just offering a listening ear after a tough day.
That's what I'm talking about. Women lifting each other up, celebrating each other's wins.
Yes.
It's such a powerful reminder that we don't have to climb the ladder of success alone. But I'm guessing it's not always sunshine and roses, right?
No, it never is.
Right.
And the video doesn't shy away from the less glamorous side of this conversation.
Okay.
Some of these women have experienced the opposite: jealousy, competition, even sabotage from other women.
Oh, man, which is so disheartening because, we know how much harder women have to work to be taken seriously, to shatter those glass ceilings.
Yeah.
You'd think we'd be each other's biggest cheerleaders.
You would think. And yet, it's not always the case. And what's interesting is that these women aren't just complaining about it.
Yeah.
They're really trying to dissect why it happens.
Okay, so what's their analysis? What's driving this less than sisterly behavior?
One woman suggests it's a generational thing. She argues that older generations of women were often raised in environments where competition, especially for a limited number of opportunities, was encouraged.
Oh, interesting.
They were taught to see each other as rivals, not allies.
Which, if you think about it, plays right into that patriarchal system we've been talking about all along.
Exactly.
Hitting women against each other, making them feel like they have to fight for scraps instead of working together to demand a bigger slice of the pie.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of internalized patriarchy comes into play.
Right.
It's not always a conscious choice, but sometimes women, often unconsciously, perpetuate the very systems that hold them back.
Because we internalize those messages we've been fed our whole lives, right?
Yes.
Like, there's only room for one woman at the top.
Yeah.
Or, if she succeeds, it means I've failed.
Right.
Which is such a damaging and ultimately false dichotomy. But breaking free from those deeply ingrained beliefs,
Oh, it's tough.
it's easier said than done.
It's a process, that's for sure.
Right.
But these women are living proof that it is possible to challenge those assumptions, to create those supportive, empowering networks.
Right.
They see it as their responsibility to break the cycle, to create a different reality for younger generations.
Okay, I love that energy.
Yeah.
So we've talked about earning potential, feminine power, the complexities of female relationships.
Yeah.
Is there anything else these amazing women unpack before we wrap up this deep dive?
Well, they touch on a few other key themes, but there's one final takeaway I think is especially important, and it ties back to something you said earlier.
Well, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Remember how you mentioned that it's easy to fall into those stereotypical boxes when we think about African women?
Yeah, because it's such a diverse continent with so many different cultures and traditions and experiences.
Exactly.
It's so reductive and, frankly, pretty insulting to lump everyone into one homogenous group.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the most valuable things this video highlights. The diversity of thought, even within a group of 6 women from the same country.
Right.
Their backgrounds, their experiences, their perspectives on gender roles, it's all over the map.
Which is a good reminder to all of us, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's check our assumptions at the door and approach these conversations with curiosity and an open mind, because there's always more to learn, Always more to unpack.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And I think what makes this video so powerful is that it doesn't shy away from those points of tension. You
Yeah.
know, those moments where different perspectives collide.
Right.
Because it's in those collisions that we often find the most growth, the most opportunity for learning.
And that's what this whole deep dive is all about, right?
Yeah.
Giving you, the listener, a glimpse into these complex conversations, these nuanced debates, so that you can walk away feeling informed, challenged, and maybe even a little bit changed by what you've heard.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
And I have to say, one of the things I appreciate most about this video is how it ends. It's not just about dissecting these issues.
Yeah.
It's about action.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that. What's their call to action?
It's all about empowering women to embrace their potential to pursue their ambitions without apology.
Okay.
They talk about the importance of financial independence, of breaking free from limiting beliefs, and of supporting each other along the way.
I love that. It's not about tearing each other down. It's about rising together.
Yeah,
Because ultimately, a win for one woman is a win for all of us, right?
absolutely. And they end with this really powerful message, which I think is worth repeating here. They say, to every woman out there, know your worth, own your power, and never be afraid to shine your light brightly.
Wow, that gave me chills. It's such a beautiful reminder that we have so much more power than we often realize. But here's a question for you. We've talked a lot about financial independence as a form of empowerment.
Hmm.
And while that's obviously crucial, I can't help but wonder, are there other aspects of empowerment that are equally important, especially in the African context?
That's a brilliant question. And it's something I hope you, the listener, will continue to ponder even after this deep dive is over. Because true empowerment is multifaceted.
Right.
It's about access to education, healthcare, and equal opportunities. It's about having a voice in your community and being able to exercise your rights. And it's about challenging cultural norms and expectations that limit women's potential.
So it's not just about how much money you have in your bank account. It's about having the agency and the freedom to
Wow.
make choices that align with your values and aspirations, regardless of what society might dictate.
Exactly. It's about defining success on your own terms, not by someone else's standards.
I love that. And it feels like a fitting note to end on. So to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hearts and minds of these incredible Nigerian women. We hope their stories, their insights, and their calls to action have sparked something within you, inspiring you to question, to learn, and to continue these crucial conversations long after this episode ends.